Hey, it's Todd Rhodes, and I am joined today by Warren Bird and Ryan Hartwig, and they are the authors of a brand new book called Teams That Thrive. You want to hold it up, Warren?
Yeah, sure.
Warren Bird. Warren's going to hold that up. Teams That Thrive, 5 Disciplines of Collaborative Church Leadership. And we're going to talk about that for about the next 10 to 15 minutes with the two authors, Warren and Ryan. First of all, thanks, guys, for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much.
Well, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a hard time, but first I want to hear a little bit about both of you. Ryan, let's start with you. I just met you a couple minutes ago. Tell me a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a prof out here at Azusa Pacific University in Los Angeles, California. I teach group and organizational communication and those kinds of things, and study the church. I think my desire to study the church came from me growing up in the church. I was a pastor's kid, and so I kind of grew up in it and never went far away from it. And it's my joy right now to do research that hopefully benefits the church in some ways.
Very good. Very good. Warren, I've known you a little bit, but tell everybody that's watching a little bit about yourself.
Well, just to brag on Ryan, one more line. Ryan loves to be practical and put practical tools in people's hands. And that's why I was drawn to him. I thought, man, if we can research this idea of teams and churches and find out best practices and the like, and then put that as a tool that will help churches, this is going to really fit a need. I'm the research director at Leadership Network. This book is the 27th co-authored book that I've done, Teams That Thrive. TeamsThatThriveBook.com is where to find it. And I enjoy working with Todd Rhodes.
Well, thank you. I enjoy working with you too. Are you feeling okay today, Warren? You look funny.
Well, meaning that viewers may not be aware that we both work at Leadership Network and that we get along. Yes,
we actually do get along just about all the time. Just about all the time, right? Yeah. He's not going to comment on that, is he? Okay. All right. Well, we're going to hop right into it. All right, guys. I'm going to bust your chops here a little bit. I did a search on Amazon today. There's 132,319 books written on leadership. Okay? If you drill down on that, there's like 40,232 book titles that have anything to do with leadership teams. So, I mean, it's a pretty saturated marketplace. I mean, why in the world would you write a book on team leadership in 2015? Do you have anything new to say?
Ryan, I'll start and you give rebuttal. There is only one book specifically about church senior leadership teams from a research perspective.
And that was by John Maxwell. Right?
Actually, not. John.
Oh, okay.
John has written outstanding books. They're not research-based per se. In terms of what helps a senior leadership team work well or not.
Yeah. So, Todd, this study really came out of my work. So as I was doing my PhD work, I did a dissertation working with a church leadership team. And so, of course, I had to do all this research. And the research that I was able to find really fell into 2 categories. One was it was corporate marketplace research or kind of best practices from some managers, or whatever came out of the church world was more kind of folks who've been around for a while, kind of saying, hey, here's how we've done it, and we'd encourage you maybe to do it a similar way. But there was very, very little research actually on church senior leadership teams. So I think when Warren and I got together, we thought, well, maybe we could offer something unique if we actually study teams in the church, for the church, rather than trying to bring insights from the marketplace into the church. Or just speaking solely from anecdotal experience. So that's what I think is unique about this book, and hopefully what makes it a unique offering and something that's really useful.
Very good.
And there are, okay.
No, I was just going to say you took it from 132,000 down to 1 very quickly, and I appreciate that, man. That is that's good stuff. You say in the book title, though, I'm going to ask. You talk about collaborative church leadership. Kind of define that. Are we talking about senior leadership teams? Are we talking about kind of the shared leadership model? Kind of define that for us a little bit, Brian.
Yeah, I think really we're talking about various formulations of church folks who are trying to say we want to do leadership together in some sort of collaborative fashion, whether that's maybe two co-pastors, or we have a senior leadership team, or even we're elder-led. We realize that most folks are saying in some fashion we're doing leadership by team now. We realize the benefits of working together. It's better for us to have several together rather than just one. The we is better than the me. And so various churches are finding different formulations to do this. So we're particularly kind of looking at leadership teams, typically kind of the group that oversees and directs the spiritual and the day-to-day direction of the church. Though what we talk about here could be applied to eldership models, staff-led models, and so on.
So, Todd, although everybody seems to have a team, they don't really function as a team. For example, we found a surprising number of churches where the team had this idea that their job is merely to advise the senior pastor, and then the senior pastor makes the decision. So any idea of collaboratively deciding it together, collaboratively implementing it, collaboratively owning it, those churches don't do, and they're missing huge opportunities for the benefit of what a healthy, well-working team could do.
So you're suggesting that that perhaps, and this I'll touch on this in just a second. You're suggesting that perhaps leadership should be a little bit more collaborative rather than just one guy and then maybe some hirelings around him. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we actually did a whole chapter on the team pieces in the Bible, the theology of it, examples of it, metaphors for it, just to undergird this idea that working collaboratively is a good and godly and biblical thing to do.
Okay, well, that what a great segue for the questions I was going to ask you, because I sat down this afternoon knowing I was going to talk to both of you guys and knowing what our topic was here in the book, and I thought very quickly on the topic of shared leadership, and I'm going to share with you three things that I think, sometimes I tend to attract a few trolls here and there. There's going to be some naysayers on this book, I'm telling you guys. So I just thought, just off the top of my head, here are three things that I want you guys, I'm going to shoot them off to you, and I want you to kind of rebut them and put me in my place, please. First one, you talked about it just a tad bit here, Warren. There's going to be some people that say, senior leadership teams just aren't biblical. Can you address that?
Ryan can.
Yeah, we just don't see that at all in the scriptures. When you look at the New Testament model, the elders were always referred to in the plural. You just see this all the way through, that there's this group of elders, who are saying, and it seemed right to us, right, to move in these different directions. And so we actually wanted to be so sharp on that we asked a biblical scholar to help us write that chapter. And so we used Dr. Sid Buzzell, who's the dean of the School of Theology at a Christian university, to help us even frame out and write that chapter, because we wanted to be so careful and make sure that we really unpack that well scripturally, and we just see that all the way through.
Think about even the Trinity. Christianity, here's a quote from the book, Teams That Thrive, book.com. Christianity is unique among major religions in presenting one God who eternally exists and functions as a divine team.
Very good. Let me press down a little bit, though. We're all seeing more and more leadership teams, which I think is great. Is this more of a, and I understand you're saying it's biblical, is this more of a last 10 years kind of a trend, though, Warren, do you think? Because I know growing up, it was, at least the stream that I was in, was very much strong pastor. It was all the churches that I knew of were pastor led. And I don't think you're saying that churches aren't pastor led, but you're saying that there's value in teams. Are you seeing more and more churches kind of taking more of a team approach? And is that one of the reasons you wrote the book as well?
Yes, to help teams maximize what they're doing. But, even way back when, before ideas of team, the pastor had like a kitchen cabinet, a handful of people that was kind of the in group that we're going to bounce, and they were the real decision makers. And in fact, we have a whole segment in the book about identifying who the actual team is in your church. So in essence, we're saying teams have always been, they may not have been called by that, but we want to help you do them right and well and healthily and effectively. Ryan?
Yeah, I also jump on that too. I think we've seen the shift also in the corporate world, moving from the single leader who kind of calls all the shots. So you kind of had the COO, and then you had a staff, and then you realized the COO couldn't do it all. CEO. So then you have a CEO, COO model, and still the restraint upon that. And so we saw kind of in the corporate world over the last 20 years, the shift towards teams. And it seems as though that is kind of bleeding into the church world as well. I mean, I think that we tend to, in the church, read a lot of the things that are out there from the marketplace and see these trends and say, hey, is that practical for the church as well? And so I think that's part of what's kind of driving that and bringing that more into the conversation, into the conversation today. But I think, as Warren said, and as we try to explain in the book, that those ideas are in fact biblical. I mean, that it's not that the church moves towards leadership teams because the corporate world is. It's that the corporate world realized that, wow, the body of Christ imagery, that this collaborative imagery actually works, and maybe we can take advantage of that. And so I think we also see that in the church.
Good. I'm going to put all my cards on the table here. I've got two more kind of naysayer things, and I think both of these would be said from a senior pastor standpoint. Don't want to pick on the senior pastors here, but this is what I think a few senior pastors that are for more that strong pastor, I'm the pastor, and you need to listen to me type of a model might say. Some of those guys and gals might say, look, senior pastor or senior leadership teams don't work. That could be one thing that they would say. I've heard it said actually. My other third one was that senior leadership teams are really for wimps that don't want to take the credit or the downfall for a decision.
Sure.
Slap me down on that one.
Yeah, here's what I'd encourage. We profile several different churches and several different teams. So, after we did a bunch of survey research, we went out there, we did lots of site visits and did interviews with folks. We profiled some of those in the book. And I'm thinking about, I'd encourage those senior pastors to listen to what some other senior pastors have said. We actually closed the book. One of my favorite quotes from all of our research. We were the church out in New Jersey, and the pastor said, I used to lead the church, but now I lead the church. Now I lead the team, and the team leads the church, and I'm having so much fun doing it. And that's really, I think, what we see is that the folks who tried this out realize, man, this works out so well, and it frees me up, and it gives me so much joy, and allows me to focus on what I'm really good at while allowing other folks to step into the leadership giftings that they have, and it's good for everybody.
And Todd, I think a lot of the people who say teams don't work have never really seen a healthy functioning team. What they know of as a team is a bunch of lackeys that jump when they say jump and, fill their requests, but they're not really fully contributing, creative, significant players in the decision making. And these pastors have missed huge potential in what their empowered staff could do.
Yeah, I agree. Here's my take, and you guys tell me if I'm way off on this. I think from a pastor standpoint, from a pastor that doesn't have a good team or that's not using shared leadership or a shared leadership team in some way or another, it could either be one, they're just egotistical and darn it, it's my church and you're going to do it my way, or what you just said, Warren. They've never had a team. The team around them has always been dysfunctional, or the team around them has never really followed through. So it's just easier for them to do everything themselves rather than to try and gather a good team around. So for the pastor out there that's we're not gonna probably win over any egotistical pastors here today. But what would be your bit of advice, guys, for the pastor that says, man, I would love to have a team, but the team I have right now is just either so dysfunctional or filled with, kind of guys and gals that are kind of lackeys, and I got to do everything for them anyway, so I might as well do it myself. Where do you start?
Yeah, Absolutely. That's why we wrote the book, I think, was to help those folks who say, hey, I think this could work, but I really don't know where to start. I don't really know how to move forward here. And so we kind of walk through a process of what a pastor can do and how they can take stock of, well, why would I want to have a team? And how would I want to structure that team? And who are the kinds of folks that I would need to have on that team? Can I find more of those folks? There's some people who maybe are serving at that level right now who don't need to be serving there, and so on. So we really do try to help walk that through. The other thing I guess I would say is there's a lot of bad advice on teamwork actually that's out there, which I think is a lot of the reason why we have such poor teams. And so we're really hoping that the advice that we give is really sound advice. I mean, we think it is, but it's really sound advice so that those folks who really want to do this well and want to find ways to bring other people involved and lead their churches collaboratively can figure out how to do it and find a lot of great joy in the process. So hopefully that's what folks are going to find as they read this book, is that sort of roadmap. We don't just tell folks, what to do and why to do it, but we also show you how to actually do it, how to have some of these difficult conversations, how to navigate tricky membership issues, those kinds of things.
And in fact, one of the things we're doing for people who buy the book, teamsthatthrivebook.com, shortly after its release, is we have this thing called Have a New Team by Friday. So Ryan, why don't you tell them about that?
Yeah. So what we did was we took the concept from the book and tried to say, okay, what would be a process that a team could work through really in 5 Fridays? So it's have a new team by Friday in 5 Fridays. So what's a process they could work through? And it's very short, very simple. You can just do in meetings. That we think that during that 5 weeks, a team could generate a lot of momentum and really feel like they're starting to make some progress and really moving forward, and hopefully then want to continue to invest more and more in developing their team and helping to make it thrive.
So in essence, if a pastor gives 5 or 6 weeks to something and then says, okay, are we any better? Are we having a bigger impact? Are we working together more harmoniously, less dysfunctionally? They can size it up.
Yeah.
Excellent. One more question. We're about out of time. I want to ask both of you. Let's start with you, Warren. The book is based on research, you said. What's one thing that really surprised you in your research on teams? Anything stick out that you can share really quickly?
Lots of surprises. For example, we ask people in churches, how many people are on your senior leadership team? And the vast majority didn't come up with the same number of people within the same church. Now, on the one hand, that's good, and that it shows a fluidity. Hey, for the next 3 months, we're doing this project, so we're going to bring Susie into the team or Mario into the team for this special project, and so it changes who the team is, and then they're out as we do something else. But on the other hand, it just speaks to there's not a clear definition. That was the other big surprise, that how many churches, when we asked what is the purpose of your team, gave the same purpose as the church overall. So you think about that. Well, then, are they trying to do everything the church does? Is there nothing distinct that's their part in how the overall church vision is done? They don't have clarity of mission and identity, and therefore they are frustrated as a team.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't happen at the team level, it probably breaks down at the church level as well. Yeah. Great stuff, Warren. Ryan?
For me, how many folks do not have any sort of training in how to lead a team? And I think it's another one of these things that, you go to seminary and you get all this training to be a pastor and you learn a lot of things, but this is one of those things you don't learn. In fact, we asked of the formal team leaders, the folks who were responsible for facilitating these teams, how many of them had some sort of education. Less than 20%, so less than 1 in 5 actually had some education. So I think this kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier. Are we surprised that teams are really struggling? Well, probably not. They're struggling because they really don't have the kind of resources that they need. So again, we really hope that this is the kind of book. And then we also offer on teamsthatthrivebook.com a lot of different resources. The pastors can go and they can access, they can download, and they can kind of learn. Maybe after a few months, they can say they actually did have some formal training in leading teams and really start to see some significant changes for their teams and for their churches.
Very good. Good stuff, guys. The book again is called Teams That Thrive: 5 Disciplines of Collaborative Church Leadership. Ryan, Warren, thank you for joining us. You can get the book at, I believe, Warren, you've mentioned this at least once, teamsthatthrivebook.com.
Yeah.
Correct?
That's it.
All right. Well, everybody
Thank you so
stop
much.
watching this video right now and go right over to teamsthatthrivebook.com.
You're
Thanks,
awesome,
guys.
Todd.
Thank
Thanks.
you so much.